It was already past 11 when Emily carefully turned the key in the lock and slipped quietly into the hallway, moving almost like a shadow. She made sure every step was as quiet as possible so she wouldn't wake the kids. They were, of course, sound asleep in their beds, and that fact gave her a brief sense of relief. But Jake was a different story. He stood there, at the entrance to the hallway, wide awake. His silhouette was outlined in the dim light, almost as if he had been waiting for her the whole night. He didn't say a word, but the way he looked at her made it clear something was off. His eyes, usually warm and full of affection, were now cold and suspicious. Emily took off her jacket, feeling the weight of his gaze, and hung it on the hook by the door. "Well, did you have fun?" Jake's voice was sharp, almost venomous. The way he said it felt like a punch to the gut, the bitterness practically dripping from his words. Emily's eyebrows shot up in confusion. She didn't understand where this was coming from. "Jake, what are you talking about?" she asked, her voice genuinely puzzled. She couldn't grasp what could have caused him to react like this. He knew she was going to be late. There was a work event tonight, something they had talked about beforehand. She had told him she would come home late. Nothing unusual, just another corporate gathering with her colleagues. And now, here she was, facing him, while he acted like something terrible had happened. "We'll talk tomorrow," Jake grumbled, his tone filled with irritation. He turned toward the bedroom, adding, "The kids are already asleep." Emily stood there in the hallway, watching him walk away. A tight knot formed in her stomach. Something had gone very wrong, and whatever it was, it hung in the air between them like an invisible threat. The next day, after sending the kids off to Grandma's for the afternoon, Jake and Emily sat at the kitchen table. The tension between them was palpable, hanging in the air like a storm waiting to break. 2 cups of tea sat untouched on the table, their steam long since vanished, mirroring the icy coldness that had settled between them. Neither of them dared to break the silence, each waiting for the other to speak first. The weight of the unsaid things hung heavily over them, and it was unbearable. Emily was the first to crack, unable to take the oppressive silence any longer. Her mind raced with fear and confusion, wondering what had caused Jake to act this way. Was it something at work? Was he about to lose his job? Did the car break down again? Or maybe he lent Tony money, and that unreliable fool still hadn't paid him back? She had no idea what could be going on. "Jake, what's going on? What is this?" she asked, her voice trembling with anxiety. "You're scaring me. Is it work? Are they firing you? Is the car busted again? Or did you lend Tony money and he didn't pay you back? What the hell is happening?" Jake remained silent, his face unreadable, his jaw clenched. It seemed like he was carefully choosing his words, holding back something big, something that would shatter the fragile peace between them. "Did you meet up with Josh?" His words came out cold and abrupt, slicing through the silence like a knife. Emily blinked, momentarily caught off guard. It took her a second to figure out who he was talking about. "Josh? You mean the guy from sales?" she asked, her confusion clear. "Well, yeah, he was there yesterday. You know that." But Jake's expression didn't change, and that sent a shiver down her spine. What was going on? And how was it with him? Jake's voice dripped with sarcasm and bitterness, as if he was laying out a trap for her. Emily furrowed her brow, feeling a growing mix of frustration and confusion. "How was what with him?" she asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. She was beginning to see where this was headed, but she couldn't quite believe it. "Is he a better man than me?" Jake's voice cracked as he hurled the question at her, his anger finally spilling over. Emily froze, her mouth falling open in shock. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. This was too absurd, too ridiculous to even respond to. "Oh my God, Jake!" She threw her hands up in exasperation. "What are you even saying? Are you serious right now? What kind of nonsense is this? You tell me what kind of nonsense this is." Jake barked back, his voice sharp with pain. He, who was always calm and rational, now sounded like a man on the edge, pushed to his limit by his own thoughts. "Why, as a wife and the mother of our 2 kids, would you go and cheat on me?" Emily was stunned into silence. His accusations were so out of the blue, so ridiculous, she had no idea how to respond. Her mind raced, trying to make sense of it all. "Jake, come on. You can't really believe that," she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. "I would never." A message popped up on Jake's phone, grabbing his attention. "Hey, how are you?" Amanda had texted. For a few moments, he just stared at the screen, trying to make sense of those 3 simple words. How was he? Well, he felt like crap. Ever since the seeds of doubt about Emily had been planted in his mind, Everything had spiraled out of control. His sleep was restless, his appetite gone, and his thoughts were consumed by images feeding his jealousy and mistrust. And it all started with that message from Amanda, that seemingly innocent phrase that flipped his whole world upside down. "Not great," Jake texted back, keeping it short. He didn't want to get into it, but at the same time, he didn't want to be rude either. After all, Amanda had been the one to give him the heads up. Could he really trust her, though? He wasn't entirely sure, but ever since she had said those words, his mind had been on overdrive. "I didn't want you to hear this from someone else, but I saw Emily with another guy. I get it. Want to grab a drink? I'm nearby and can lend an ear if you need to talk. Sometimes you just need to let it all out." Her reply came almost instantly. Jake thought for a moment. Why not? He had been drowning in his own thoughts and suspicions for days now. Amanda seemed to understand what he was going through more than anyone else. She was always kind, always careful with her words. Even when she dropped the bomb about Emily, she had done it in that soft, considerate tone that made him think maybe, just maybe, she was right. But even if she wasn't, it wouldn't hurt to spend the evening having a drink and getting his mind off things for a while. Plus, he had the weekend ahead of him, so no harm in blowing off some steam. An hour later, Jake was sitting in a small, cozy bar on the outskirts of New York, sandwiched between an old bookstore and a cute little cafe. This place was always quiet, just what he needed right now. Amanda was sitting across from him, looking at him with those big, understanding eyes. She asked him questions, nodding thoughtfully as if she truly felt his pain. She didn't push, but every now and then, she gently steered the conversation back to the uncomfortable subject, like she was trying to help him process it all. At one point, she reached over and placed her delicate hand with a neat French manicure on top of his. "I know this is tough for you," she said softly, "but you don't have to go through this alone. I'm here, and you can lean on me whenever you need to." Her words broke through the emotional wall he'd been putting up. He squeezed her hand, feeling the warmth of her touch. Despite the storm in his head, the alcohol and her presence started to blur the edges of his thoughts, making it all just a little easier to handle for the first time in days. Amanda was looking good, like, really good. She was the same age as Emily, but damn, did they look different? Amanda had that sleek, toned look, the kind you get from hitting the gym every day. No kids, no extra stress, just her life, and all the time in the world to make sure she was on point. While Emily had those soft edges, that warmth that came with being a mom, Amanda, she was sharp. Her body was like an Instagram fitness model, not a single sign of sleepless nights or chasing a toddler around the house. Jake couldn't help but let his mind wander back to that. The comparison. His mind ran circles around it, and he hated it. Why the hell would Josh, of all people, mess around with Emily when Amanda was right there? She seemed more like the type of woman guys would drool over. Or, hell, maybe Josh had already had his fun with Amanda too. Maybe with others. His thoughts spiraled again, his grip tightening on the glass in his hand as the anger and confusion boiled up again. Jake threw back another shot, feeling the burn in his throat but welcoming it. Anything to numb the flood of emotions. Amanda, sitting across from him, was quick to catch the change in his mood. She leaned in closer, her fingers gently brushing against his hand. It wasn't just a casual touch. It was one of those intentional, thoughtful touches, the kind that makes you pay attention. "Jake, come on." Her voice was soft, almost soothing, but there was a hint of concern in her eyes. She was trying to reach him, trying to bring him back from wherever his mind had wandered. But she could feel it. She knew none of this was really helping. Her words were falling flat, bouncing off the walls Jake had built around himself. Then something shifted. Her expression changed, her eyes lighting up with something else, something mischievous. Jake felt himself tense up as she leaned in even closer, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "So, how about it?" she said, her tone playful yet deadly serious at the same time. "Want to get even? Pay her back?" The words hit him like a freight train. He nearly dropped his drink. Wait, what? Get even? Who? Emily? Josh? Both of them? Jake's brain couldn't keep up with the flood of thoughts crashing down on him all at once. Revenge. That one word was so simple, yet so tempting in the heat of the moment. He stared at Amanda, her eyes gleaming with a strange, almost dangerous light. This wasn't some casual joke. At least, it didn't feel like it. "What the hell do you mean?" The whiskey buzz was heavy in Jake's head, the warm fog making it hard to wrap his mind around Amanda's words. It was like they were dripping slowly into his brain, one by one, but not quite forming the full picture right away. You know what I mean. Amanda leaned in closer, her face coming just inches from his. Her hand, smooth and confident, slid off his shoulder, leaving a trail of warmth behind it. She moved with this natural ease, like she'd done this 100 times before. She's with Josh, and you could be with me? For a split second, everything froze. Jake jerked back as if hit by a jolt of electricity. His heart pounded, adrenaline spiking. What did she just say? No, seriously, what was she trying to suggest? His brain couldn't process it all at once, but the implications of her words were becoming disturbingly clear. You've always been on my mind, Jake, she pressed on, her voice growing more insistent. There was a new edge to it, lower, thicker with tension. Her other hand, slow and deliberate, slid down, creeping dangerously close to his thigh. He noticed, and his head spun even more. Not just from the alcohol now. It was a mix of feelings, shock, disbelief, and something else creeping in, something dangerous. You know we could do this, she continued, her voice now barely a whisper, dripping with temptation. No. Jake snapped back suddenly, shaking off the fog. The touch that had felt so intense just a moment ago now burned like fire. He shoved her hand away, his face twisting in anger and confusion. Hell no. Don't even think about it. Amanda's expression shifted. Her eyes darkened with hurt, almost like he'd insulted her. She pulled her hands back, but her gaze stayed locked on him, sharp and searching. What? I'm not good enough for you, she shot back, her voice laced with genuine offense, as if she couldn't understand why he was rejecting her. This isn't about that. Jake's voice was hard, almost cutting. I'm not cheating on my wife. I don't care what you say or how you try to spin it. Amanda's eyes narrowed, her face growing more serious, almost angry now. But she cheated on you, Jake. Amanda's voice rose, emotions flaring up suddenly. With your best friend, with Josh. And you're just gonna sit here and let it happen? Most people would have already divorced her for that. She took a sharp breath, her chest rising and falling quickly. Jake froze, his heart hammering in his chest. Amanda was saying all the things he didn't want to hear, things that tore at him inside. But could he really be sure of it yet? Or was this still part of the game? Jake felt his world crumbling around him, and Amanda's words only drove the nails deeper into the breaking foundation. What's it to you about my family life, huh? Jake narrowed his eyes at Amanda, feeling a strange vibe creeping up his spine. Something about her behavior was suddenly off. Her persistence, her prying, the weird interest she seemed to have in things that really weren't her business. It was like she was pushing him, trying to dig into places she didn't belong. Amanda shrugged casually, but it felt forced, like she was brushing off the seriousness. Hey, it's nothing, she said, her voice deliberately nonchalant, but there was something fake about the way she said it. I'm just looking out for you, Jake, that's all. Yeah. Jake raised an eyebrow, suspicion growing. Well, why don't you tell me what really went down between Emily and Josh, huh? He shot back. Not sure why he even bothered to ask, but it felt like the right question at the moment. For a moment, Amanda froze, then quickly masked her surprise with a smug grin. Well, her eyes darted nervously for a split second, and she shrugged again, like she didn't care. I already told you. You told me they locked themselves in a room. And what? What happened after? Jake wasn't about to let her off the hook that easily. Well, what do you think happens when two grown adults are alone in a locked office? She snorted, her tone dripping with insinuation, but it felt way too obvious, like she was pushing it too hard. Jake squinted, his suspicion deepening. And what were you doing while they were locked up, huh? Why do you even know about it? He pressed, not backing down. Amanda shifted her gaze, her earlier confidence faltering just a bit. Well, I wasn't in there. I just saw them going together. And then, they came out. Together. Jake's mind was racing now, trying to piece together the mess she was throwing at him. Something wasn't adding up. There were a lot of people at that party, right? Lots of eyes? It was a corporate event, he pointed out, his tone sharpening. Amanda didn't miss a beat, but her voice tightened, her nerves barely hidden. Yeah, sure, most of the company was there. But, I doubt anyone else noticed. People were busy doing their own thing. Jake studied her, the tension building in his gut. Her words felt like knots, tangled and too tightly wound. And if I asked around, you think nobody else saw them slip away together? Amanda shrugged again, her eyes darting like she was trying to escape the conversation. Go ahead, ask, but like I said, I doubt anyone else was paying attention. Jake wasn't buying it. He stood up, dropping some cash on the counter without breaking eye contact. Maybe you're blowing this all out of proportion. Maybe there was nothing between them, he said, his voice steady but cold. Amanda's gaze dropped, her face finally showing a flicker of unease. She didn't say a word, and that silence spoke volumes. There's nothing happening between us, Jake said, his voice firm as he rose to his feet. And I don't want to talk to you anymore. Jake, wait. Amanda's voice came out desperate, as if she'd just realized she'd lost her grip on the situation. He turned his back on her, the sting of disappointment ringing in his chest. Try finding yourself a man without resorting to lies, he shot back, walking out of the bar, leaving her behind. What the hell do you want from me, Amanda? Jake's voice came out sharp, way sharper than he intended. He didn't expect a snap like that, but something about the whole situation just rubbed him the wrong way. He stared at her, really taking her in, noticing things he hadn't before. Amanda was usually cool, calm, in control, but tonight, there was something off about her. She seemed fake. Amanda raised her eyebrows, pretending like his outburst was some kind of joke. But her eyes, those told a different story. She let his words hang in the air for a moment, then finally answered, trying to keep her voice steady. Jake, come on. What's with all the heat? I'm just worried about you, man. Can't I be concerned? Oh, now, you're concerned? Jake shook his head, disbelief clear in his voice. Cut the crap, Amanda. You keep bringing up this thing with Emily and Josh. Why the hell do you care so much? His tone was heavy with doubt as he locked his eyes on her, daring her to give him a straight answer. Amanda flinched, just for a second, her confident smirk faltering. But then, just like that, she was back to shrugging it off like it was no big deal. Look, I already told you, she said, with that same damn shrug. I saw them, all right? Together, at the office party. They locked themselves in that room. What more do you need? And what happened after? Jake wasn't backing down. His voice had this edge to it now, like he wasn't just asking, he was demanding. You said they went into the room. So what? What's your big theory, Amanda? Amanda acted like she was surprised by his persistence, but this time, she couldn't hide the flicker of panic in her eyes. She leaned back in her chair, rolling her eyes like she was bored of the whole thing. Come on, Jake. What do you think happens when two grown adults lock themselves in an office? She sneered, trying to sound casual, but it felt like she was forcing it too hard, like she wanted him to think something shady went down. But Jake wasn't taking the bait. He studied her, reading every little movement, every change in her voice. And what were you doing while they were locked in? Why do you even know about this? He fired back, his tone a little harsher than he meant. Amanda stiffened, but she tried to keep her cool. Her fingers started fiddling with the strap of her purse, but she quickly stopped, hoping Jake didn't notice. I was just around, okay? I saw them go in. And then, well, they came out. Together, she said, her voice trying to sound casual, but Jake could feel the cracks in her story now. Jake's mind was racing, piecing together everything she was saying. Something about this wasn't adding up. She was trying way too hard to sell him this story. You really think no one else at that party noticed? There were a lot of people there. Someone must have seen them, right? Jake pressed, refusing to let her off easy. Amanda was clearly nervous now, even though she was trying to hide it. She suddenly looked away, like she was searching the bar for an escape. Look, everyone was doing their own thing. I don't think anyone else saw, she mumbled, her confidence fading. Jake had enough. Her words, her dodging. It all only made him more suspicious. He stood up slowly, never taking his eyes off her, and tossed some bills on the counter. You know what, Amanda? I think you're full of it. Maybe there was nothing going on between them. His voice was ice cold, sharper than he intended. Amanda dropped her gaze, her whole tough girl act crumbling. She didn't have anything left to say, and that silence said it all. There's nothing between us, Jake said firmly as he stood up, making it clear. And I don't want to talk to you anymore. Jake, wait. Amanda's voice came out desperate, like she realized she'd lost control of the game she was playing. He turned his back on her, that hollow feeling settling deep in his chest. Try finding yourself a guy without all the lies, Amanda. He threw over his shoulder as he walked out of the bar, his footsteps echoing in the now quiet space. And just like that, he was gone, leaving her sitting alone.